So if you go to a nursery or garden center, you'll probably encounter something like this. A beautiful photo of a dahlia and a bag of peat moss with bulbs in it, or tubers. So you're probably wondering, oh, okay, well, there's directions in the back and I'll show you how to plant, but they're kind of funky things that I want to go in depth a little bit about. So I'm going to open this package up just to show you what dahlia tubers look like, because you'll probably encounter them two different ways, but this is probably the most common, is to buy them in a bag like this, and what you'll get is one or two clusters of tubers, or tuberous roots, as they are. So a true tuber actually will have eyes like a potato, basically, but dahlias, their eyes are actually in a central, what we call a crown, so they exist in one area and not in the tuber itself. So if you just have the tuber and plant it without the eye, then it's not going to do anything. Oh, oops. So basically, if I plant this, I'm not going to get anything, so I need this part that has an eye. So just to show you what an eye looks like, they will look like a little eye that you'd see in a potato, but here they've already started growing. So if you look at that, you see it's a shoot starting to grow. So basically this is what you plant. So sometimes there's actually another one in here, so there's two of them. So you'll get sort of something like this wad of tubers and roots, and occasionally you'll see the shoots, and that's what you want to see. You want to make sure that they have shoots so they'll actually grow a plant. So yep, basically all you do is take this and plant it, and they go down about 3-4 inches down, and they'll be ready to go. So sometimes, particularly here in the US, we'll get dahlias sold like this, in a little baggie and one single tuber. So let me show this to you. So very similar to the one that I broke off earlier, but the difference is this one has at least one eye that will grow. Okay, so there it is, and it's a little hard to see, but there's a little purple nub in there, so that as long as it has one eye, this is perfectly a viable tuber then that you can plant. So people will ask, well, what's the difference between planting a clump of tubers like this versus just one tuber? The answer really is nothing. So they'll both produce the same type of plant, even though you get multiple tubers with this one clump and you plant one tuber. As long as they each have an eye, both will grow a full-size plant, depending on the variety, of course, and how tall it gets. But if it's the same variety in clump form or single tuber form, it'll produce the same plant. So yeah, so now you know the difference, which really there isn't. So now we'll show you how to plant. So planting dahlias is actually very simple. So all you'll need are a shovel, or a small trowel, or a soil knife such as this, whatever you want to use to dig a hole, basically. You want a stake or any kind of stick, really. This is basically to mark where you've planted the tubers, and also a few dahlias will need staking. If they are a tall growing variety, they'll need support. So even if you just have a small stick that you place next to the tuber, by the time it needs that support, you can take that small stake and replace it with a taller one without spearing the tuber, basically. So it's important to have a stake or some kind of marker to mark where the tubers are, and of course the tubers to plant. And also don't forget to water it in once we're done planting. Okay. So you want to make sure to plant dahlias where they'll get the most sun. They absolutely need at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sun in order to do their best and to flower well. Dahlias need really good, well-drained soil, ideally amended with lots of organic matter. So after a few weeks, here's your dahlia. So as they're starting to come up, this is a good time to, well, first of all, weed, which is an endless task, any garden. But as they come up, this is the time that I actually prefer to fertilize. So I'm using a organic granular fertilizer, and I basically just scatter a little bit and then scratch it in. So now that it's actively growing, we want to feed it to encourage robust growth and make sure it's off to a good start. This is also the time to check for any pests such as slugs or aphids, that sort of thing. So if you see slugs, you can pick them off, which is kind of gross, but needs to be done. Otherwise, they'll devour these young tender shoots. And if you see things like aphids, for example, I prefer to just blast them off with a hose and knock them off. Some people will use insecticidal soap, or just plain soapy water is often pretty effective. But you want to make sure that you're protecting these tender shoots as they develop. And in a couple of weeks, as they develop their foliage and 3 sets of leaves, I'll often what's called topping them or pinch them at the top. And what that does is encourages lateral branches to develop, so you have a bushier plant and more flowers. It does delay the dahlia from blooming for a couple of weeks, but you'll have more flowers. It's not mandatory, but it's a very common practice that dahlia growers and gardeners will often apply. But so yeah, choose to pinch or not pinch, it'll be just fine.